said the Lions won a game. Man, we going all the way, baby. We about to celebrate.
Welcome back to the best podcast in the state of Michigan, talking all levels of football. I'm Vince.
I'm
Kory.
Brett.
And this is episode 10, and we are Great Lakes State Football. We do not have a guest this week. We had a couple guests on last week. We had Uday and Chance. We appreciate them coming on. Check that episode out to hear us discussing several high school football topics with those guys. It was a great episode. This week, while we do not have a guest, there are several topics we are going to hit on, several things that we're going to discuss from a few different levels, starting with high school, and then we do have a quick mention for D2 football, as well as MAC and Big Ten news before we get into a little bit of NFL. Before we get into those hard-hitting football topics, we are official with a new logo. Big shout out to Aaron Gleb. We just actually, before we started recording this episode, put a tweet out shouting him out. We will have in the description of our podcast episodes on YouTube and podcast stores going forward information for his Twitter and Instagram. If you want to check him out, hit him up for graphic design. So his logo is phenomenal. We appreciate his work and helping us make us look a little bit more professional. Kory and Brett apparently weren't big on my Microsoft PowerPoint graphic slide that I made in between teaching Spanish class. So
it was better than Brett's random version he spewed out the one week, but
Hey, that was more to kind of get the boat moving, get the train rolling down the tracks.
Hey man, we're only 2 months into this. We're only 2 months.
We only reached out to 10 people to do this, but Aaron hooked us up. We really appreciate him working with us. And we're excited. We have some other things on the horizon now that we have a artiste to work with, since we're not very artistic. So,
hey Kory, I miss your
Speak for
version
yourself,
of the
man.
logo.
Speak for yourself.
hey, I'm a businessman. I don't draw. I just point fingers.
Well, with that, we're going to jump into it here with a little high school football conversation. We have MHSAA, Michigan high school football, and first news, we got some DeWitt high school football news, some local news for us, all being from in Michigan here. The first is that DeWitt is lined up right now for third week of the 2022 season to play Detroit Catholic Central. I have not seen yet confirm or deny whether that is a home or away game for DeWitt. My co-host can speak on that, whether they have heard, but I have not seen anything quite yet. Usually some of those home and away non-conference games don't really get announced this early. But DeWitt's 3 non-conference games, their first 3 games of the year, and they go Hazlitt, Portland, and then Detroit Catholic Central. So pretty big non-conference game. Brett and Kory, I will be coaching, so I will not be able to make this game. Brett and Kory, hopefully for those of you who have tuned into our podcast, might be trying to go to this game. I know you guys kind of talked about it. What are you guys thinking about this matchup here?
I think it's phenomenal. It goes right along with our public versus private and 2 powerhouse programs. I'm actually kind of struggling. What division is Detroit Catholic Central? Are they D3 or D2?
They're D1. They're D1.
They're Division 1.
Did they make the playoffs this year?
Yeah. They went to the district finals.
Oh, I found them. They played Bloomfield Hills. Maybe. Anywho,
Yeah, they got beat by West Bloom. No, yeah, they got beat by West Bloomfield in the district final in 2020 when they finished 8-3.
Yep. No, I think it's a great game. I think it's 2 different caliber of programs. Detroit Catholic Central, you think kind of hard-nosed. They're going to just cram it down your throat. They're going to be big. They're going to be maybe not very fast, but they're just going to be big. And then they're playing a DeWitt team who's finesse. So it'd be interesting to see.
It's one of these situations where I think DeWitt might be shooting for the moon and probably falling among the stars here. DeWitt lost a lot. DeWitt lost a lot of and just pure athleticism on their team this year. They had a number of guys, the quarterback and wide receiver primarily, that they're going to be losing this year to graduation. Both those fellas are playing the next level in college.
And don't forget Debris and Flegler, two other big time contributors are seniors as well.
Yeah, so I don't know enough about DeWitt to know what they have coming up the ranks. But historically speaking, when you lose guys like that, it's tough to reload immediately that year. Now, it's good for DeWitt that the game is the third week of the season, opening weekend. So if there's some younger talent, they have 2 full games to gain some experience and get some tape on the 2022 Detroit Catholic Central team. But it'll be a nice measuring stick for DeWitt. DeWitt, in the last couple of years, has played some higher profile games, so it's not something that they're shy of. So it'll be interesting nonetheless. And going back to our conversation last week, it'll be a tremendous amount of playoff points for DeWitt if they can somehow manage to win that game. So it's definitely an intriguing matchup.
Yep.
Obviously, when August rolls around, there's going to be a lot of interesting matchups going into the season. But here we are in the end of January, and it's definitely, at least on paper, one of the most intriguing games for Mid-Michigan sports.
Well, I think something else that we should mention is Detroit Catholic Central plays in a conference of only 4 teams. And this is something that we talked about, I believe, last week. I don't remember if Uday brought this up or not.
Uday brought it up.
Yeah, that the Catholic League, every division, Detroit Catholic Central is in the Central League. So the Catholic League has like 4 different divisions of their conference. Because there's only 3 conference games, they have to come up with 6 non-conference opponents. So they are basically in a scheduling nightmare every
Who wants
year.
to play them?
And no one wants to play them. Nobody wants to play them. They play out of state. If you scroll down their schedule, if you go to michiganfootball.com and just scroll down their schedule, they have played 2, 3, or 4 teams out of state every single year for the last 10 seasons.
That's crazy.
10 seasons. The last time they didn't play 2 or more teams out of state in a season was 2011.
The last time Grand Ledge did that was in 04 or 05.
05.
When they
Grand
played
Ledge
Illinois.
They played
Wheaton, Illinois.
One time.
Yeah. So
One
they're
time.
having to do it every year. I mean, they're going to Illinois, they're going to Ohio, they're going to Canada, playing teams from Ontario, Indiana. I mean, they can't find teams that want to play them in the state of Michigan. The only teams that want to play them are other really good schools if they can fit into their schedule. So for Detroit Catholic Central, they know they'll make up playoff points. This isn't like Brett just brought up the playoff point system. I'm sure for them, it's not really a concern. They're just trying to find good matchups. They're going to play plenty of D1 schools. They always do. For DeWitt, this could be a huge time game. Win or lose, because with DCC being D1, the multipliers will be huge, even if they lose the game. But it's also going to be a huge test of what they have coming back. I mean, they're losing a ton of talent from the last 2 seasons. Their offense was basically, 2 years. They had the state championship team. Most of their contributors were juniors. So be interesting to see now with some of those guys gone, especially McIntosh and Ty Holtz, how they reload and face that very high profile game. That's going to be one of the biggest matchups in the state, I think, for a non-conference game.
You're playing a team of 800 dudes with a whole lot of testosterone because they haven't seen a woman in a week. It's going to be a good matchup.
It's probably going to take a backseat to King Belleville game to open out the.
That's true. The King Belleville game. I'm not saying it's the most high profile game, but it's one of. It's going to probably be one of the 10 biggest matchups for non-conference statewide games, I would think, next fall, this coming fall.
Brett and I are going to have a slate come August, September, October.
I unfortunately will not be able to make any games as I will be coaching, but Brett and Kory hopefully will be able to give us some firsthand action.
I'll make sure that I put a request in for immediate passes for the field that game.
Fuck yeah.
I love it. Moving on, we have some more news from DeWitt. Rob Zimmerman. Congratulations to Coach Zimmerman. He was named the National Coach of the Year by NFHS. Their coaches association, so that's a pretty cool honor. Obviously, Coach Zimmerman has received tons of recognition as a coach. I mean, in his career at DeWitt, he has probably one of the most impressive tenures of current coaches. He's been their coach for 23 years. He was at Cedar Springs 3 years before that. In his time at DeWitt, just in DeWitt, He has won 16 straight conference championships, 19 total, 14 district championships, 12 regional championships. He's been to 6 state titles and won 1. Pretty impressive career there. Even if he were to retire anytime soon, I mean, the guy has earned more than earned himself in the Hall of Fame. So
it's kind of interesting. For those of you that don't know, I encourage you to Google search Rob Zimmerman. I have a strong belief that him and John Gruden were twins at birth and they got separated. Between their football knowledge and the fact that they both are identical twins, that's really interesting. So take a look.
I actually got lucky and had Coach Zim coach me in the Michigan All-Star game, and the dude just knows football, and he's one of those coaches that demands respect without having to yell and, you know what I mean, freak out. Jesus, Brett, your dog is going to town.
I was gonna say, what the hell?
Oh my
break from what we're talking about. What is that noise in the background?
Yeah, it's his peg. I'll go get him.
But anyway, no, Coach Zim is one of those coaches who demands respect. And if anybody that really is from mid-Michigan, if you really look at the DeWitt football program, it all lays on Coach Zim. I mean, he's been there for 20 years now, and they've been good ever since he got there. And I don't remember really the relevance prior to him getting there. So
yeah, DeWitt. Before, it's interesting that you bring that up because I have, you know, you guys know this. If anyone listening doesn't
encyclopedia.
know this, doesn't know this about me. I'm a big history guy. Big trivia guy, especially with high school football. And I have looked into kind of DeWitt's history before Zimmerman showed up. And before Zim showed up, they did not have nearly the success they've had since he's gotten there. But they did have a slew of playoff appearances. They actually made a playoff in 1978. Which is impressive because it was very difficult to make the playoffs back then. And then they had 3 playoff appearances in the 80s and 3 in the 90s. So before he showed up, they did make 7 playoff appearances, and they had a state championship appearance in 1989. So a little fun fact, Brett wants to do Michigan football trivia going forward. There's a little fun fact for you. DeWitt football lost by 1 point to Farmington Hills Harrison in the state title in 1989, 28-27, Class B state title. So DeWitt had some success prior to Zimmerman, but not the sustained success they've had for 23 seasons since he's been there. All right.
He does look like John Gruden.
I do think that's an interesting observation. I've never thought about that before. We're going to keep this thing rolling, though, here, move on to our next MHSAA topic. This was something that was in the news back in end of December, and we missed this, and we thought it was interesting to bring it up. But a family donated anonymously. There has not been, they apparently requested that their names not be released. They donated $1 million for a new football facility at Ithaca. So another local program here in mid-Michigan, north of Lansing. Ithaca had a incredible run in the 2010, starting in the year 2009, 2010, where they almost tied the national record, which was actually set by another Michigan school, Hudson, for wins in a row. So this is pretty crazy news. Ithaca is a Division VI program. So for an anonymous donor to bring them $1 million to renovate their field. So they have a gorgeous stadium. If you've ever gone up 127, if you've ever left Lansing and gone up 127 to head north, you pass their field on the highway. It's literally on the west side of the highway heading north on 127. But their field was grass. So this donation is for them to build a turf field. It is also, part of this donation is also to create a college scholarship fund for student athletes. And apparently the intention is for the stadium to be used for all schools in Gratiot County. To host state sport events, which I thought was a very interesting statement from apparently the donor and the superintendent of Ithaca. Thoughts on this one, gentlemen?
I think it's great. It's the only turf field really like north at all, maybe Mount Pleasant, but no, I mean, I think it's great and it's awesome. As somebody who's worked with that school, I think the community's really bought in, and whoever this donor is it's awesome. I mean, it brings something to that area that they don't have currently.
I think it's a really neat opportunity, and it's something you really don't see very often in sports, especially in a small town of Ithaca. I mean, $1 million is a huge amount of money for someone to be able to donate. So this person clearly has quite wealthy, and to go into an area,
they got to be invested in that
to go
program,
into an area like Ithaca. I mean, it's probably a dairy farmer or something of sorts in the area.
Trying to get a tax break.
Yeah, probably. I mean, wealthy people are wealthy because they know how to manage your money. But I think it's a great opportunity for these kids, and it's going to be, I think it adds to another level that they're anonymous. They don't want the spotlight, which is kind of neat too, because oftentimes when people donate, they want their name everywhere. No offense to Tony Dungy, but Tony Dungy built the turf field at Jackson High School Stadium, and it says Dungy everywhere, which Dungy has a meaning to a lot of people in the world of football, which adds a sense of intrigue to it. But I think it's great, and it's something that hopefully those kids and their kids will be able to take advantage of for years.
Moving on to our next MHSAA topic here. Got two left. The next one is East Grand Rapids, one of the most high-profile and storied programs in the state of Michigan over the last, 40 years. They especially are known for their wildly impressive state championship run from 2002 to 2010, where I believe they won like 6 or 7 or more total state championships and appeared in like 10. Their head coach of 6 years, and who was an assistant for 10 years before that, so he's a part of those state championship runs, Casey Longo, has resigned as the head coach, which is very surprising. Someone who's been a part of the program for 16 years and again was a part of that state championship run. While they have not had that success the last 10 years that they did the previous 10, they have still managed to make, at one point they missed the playoffs for 2 years, and then they made 7 in a row, won a couple district titles. They had one of the worst seasons since 2000 last year at 3-6, but it should be mentioned that they play a very, very tough schedule every year. They have a very tough conference, very tough opponents, so they're not playing cakewalk teams. But what do you guys think about this resignation? Obviously going to be a high profile job for people.
I'm assuming he has another job lined up, that's why he resigned, but who really knows? Some big name recruits coming out of that school and that area. Great track program, so they always have crazy speed on that football team. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know a whole lot about it. So, Brett, if you know anything more, I mean, we got an anonymous source who told us the financials behind the job, so that'll be pretty interesting when we get to that point. But yeah, that's all I got.
East Grand Rapids is, for those of you that haven't been to the football field, the East Grand Rapids football field is a setting that you really don't get in a lot of, at least in Michigan.
It's a gorgeous stadium.
It's a gorgeous stadium, turf field, nice concourse, the school right behind it. It's right downtown.
Their field blue?
No, their field is green. Grass is green. No,
they don't have a turf. They didn't have a turf field.
They do. They have a green turf field.
Okay, I'm thinking of someone else. I thought they had like I thought they were one of the schools that had the colored turf.
No, yeah, they have green turf. But the stadium itself actually overlooks the lake right next to it. It's Reed's Lake, and the local news station, their weather ball for East Grand Rapids, sits on top of the press box. So if you ever watch the news, Wood TV 8 in the morning, and they show the news over Reed's Lake, it looks over their football field. You can always see the sunrise. It's a really cool atmosphere, and the people in the East Grand Rapids community are invested in their athletics. And it doesn't matter if they're good or they're bad; they always have a nice showing at their field. I went to East Grand Rapids Lowell playoff game in 2019. Both schools just narrowly made the playoffs, but the stadium was essentially a sellout. Like Vince mentioned, it's a high profile job. They pay, word on the street, they're going to pay upwards of $20,000, if not a little bit more, for the coaching job, the head coaching job, which is, for a head coach in the state of Michigan, that's a nice,
it's crazy.
It's a decent amount of money to coach the football team. And I know that the community is puts a lot of pressure on their coach, like Vince said, with their history, rightfully so. But it'd be interesting to see who they bring in there. Casey Longo started out his career coaching under Peter Sturzma. He was a successor to Peter Sturzma, who's now the head coach at Hope College. So he went from high school ranks to the college ranks and has had a pretty impressive career at Hope College, turning that program around. So it'll be interesting to see who they bring in. I would think it'd be a high profile job. I guess we'll tune in and see what happens over the next few weeks.
Yeah. I don't really have much else to say about it, but it is going to be interesting to see where the program goes from here. I think one of my last thoughts would be it's interesting to see a program that from 2001 to 2010 didn't have less than 10 wins in a season. They had 10 straight seasons of 10 or more wins. And in that stretch, they went 14-0 4 times in that stretch and 13-1 3 other times. One of the most storied decades of a program in state history for high school football. And then since then, since 2010, they've had 9 wins 3 times. So they haven't quite got back to that success. They made the semifinals 3 times since then, but they've also had 2 losing seasons and 3 missed playoff seasons since that stretch. So not quite the success that they had, but even what they've done in the last decade, I'm sure there's plenty of schools that would love to even touch that success that they've had. So moving on to our final high school football topic here, we're going to talk about another local news from this past week. I believe it was announced recently, and that is Alex Waters. It was announced on January 19th. He's a standout wide receiver from Lansing Catholic. He announced that he is accepting a preferred walk-on spot at Michigan State. He obviously was a star for a team that won the Division VI state championship, a team that went, I believe, 13-1. I think their only loss was to Portland, Palm Westphalia. Excuse me. They lost at Palm Westphalia by like a touchdown or less. It was a very close game. So Alex Waters, who I believe has had some all-state recognition, if I remember correctly. Any thoughts on this PWO for Michigan State?
Just good luck to this kid. That's the hardest job on earth. Preferred walk-on, you are the bottom of the barrel.
I would only say that a true walk-on gets it worse.
But there's really no true walk-ons at the D1 level. I mean, you still have to try out to be a true walk-on. But my point is, if the kid's got the grind and he thinks he's got a shot and that's where he wants to be, then good luck to him. I mean, you can't knock it. It's going to be, if I have any advice for you, Travis Waters, and you're listening to me, Alex Waters.
Excuse my co-host here. He's had a couple of whiskeys.
They're going to call you Travis at fucking Michigan State, so it doesn't matter. No, but if I had any advice, just put your nose to the grindstone, man, and eat it all up, because the road's going to be rocky, but you can do it. So
Lansing Catholic historically has had a number of big time guys. Yeah, Matt McSud is an example. Class of 2012, walk on wide out to Michigan State.
Yep. He was on the play, and I know Brett and Kory will hate me for bringing this up, but he was a part of the play.
Oh, there's trouble with the snap.
Trouble with the snap. Yeah, Matt McSud was a walk on, got to be a part of that. So I mean, you never know. You never know.
You do never know.
Between that and Appalachian State, we're never going to live it down.
Sorry, Brett, finish your thought.
We're going to have to edit this out. I just completely lost my train of thought because of you dipshits.
I'm not editing this out. I'm leaving this. Cut that.
Cut it up.
But nonetheless, I'm assuming he excels in the classroom too. I know that's one thing that the Division I programs look for is somebody that performs well on the field, but also off the field. You know, somebody's got to help out that team GPA average. But obviously he's very talented on the field. MSU, I mean, if you're a Big Ten program, you're not going to offer preferred walk-on to any kid that's a slouch. And
true.
And oftentimes it's an athlete that maybe is a little bit, he's lacking in some area. Maybe he's a little bit slow. Maybe he needs to get stronger. But the goal of a preferred walk-on is always that they can earn a scholarship by the end of their career. And there's a lot of examples on that. So best luck to Alex Waters. He deserves it.
The last thing I would add is Michigan State, one of their most storied and famous players in the modern era, was a wide receiver preferred walk-on from Tawas. Blair White. Wasn't he from Tawas? Where was Blair White from? No, Jeff Janis was from Tawas.
Janis is from Tawas.
Blair White was from Saginaw. Saginaw Valley. So, I mean, Blair White was a walk-on. By his senior year, he was a captain and an all-American wide receiver. I'm not saying that that's going to happen with Alex Waters, but I'm just saying you never know. Walk-ons sometimes end up being some of the best players in a program because, like Brett just mentioned, they develop. You never know what's going to happen by the time they go through 4 or 5 years at the program.
That's literally what I just said too, asshole. Don't neglect my point. Come on, Travis Waters, you got this. Alex, I got it. It's Alex.
Such a dick.
It's Alex. Relax.
He's not going to listen to this podcast. We're not that cool.
We'll tag him though.
We're not cool with the Zoomers yet.
We got you, Alex.
All right. The last thing we want to talk. Well, excuse me. That was our final topic for MHSAA football. We're going to move on here to college football. And before we get into FBS, we're going to talk about Division II really briefly. We're just going to mention that there was an article put out, a way too early look at the 2022 D2 football preseason power rankings. This was put out this past week by a Mr. Wayne Cavati, who is a D2 football pundit. And interestingly enough, but maybe not surprising, Ferris State for the 2022 way too early power ranking is number 1. Valdosta State, some notables. Valdosta State, they have it number 3. Grand Valley, number 5. Moving down the list, Northwest Missouri State, number 6. Shepherd, who Ferris State also beat, number 7. Anyone else staying out to you guys? I'm not really surprised by these. Some powerhouse teams, some teams that made some runs this past year.
Notre Dame, Ohio. Used to dabble with the teams in the GLIAC back in the day. They're at number 9.
They were a part of the GLIAC for one season. They were a GLIAC conference opponent for one season. Kory and I played against them.
I played against a 34-year-old DN from Notre Dame, Ohio. He was in the military.
You guys want a fun fact about Notre Dame of Ohio when Hillsdale played him in 2012 or 13? 12?
You both wear blue jerseys for the game.
We had 3 pick sixes and it was a school record. 3.
Did you have any of those?
6s. I was not on the travel squad during that game. It was at Notre Dame of Ohio. I was on the travel squad, I think, later in the season. But anyway, Brett, you have any thoughts on these way too early power rankings? These things are always kind of goofy because you never know.
I think it's interesting how much respect Ferris State's getting, rightfully deserved.
Yeah.
But they're kind of slowly, I guess we'll see what happens the next couple of years, but the way it's trending, they're trending towards becoming the Alabama of Division II.
They have Malik Mitchell back.
Jared Bernhardt is gone, but Malik Mitchell should be back.
He's only a sophomore.
Tony Anise.
They also lost
back.
They lost 2 stud offensive linemen.
Ferris State will go undefeated next year, and they will win it again at 14-0. Calling it out.
You heard it here. You heard it from Great Lakes State football first. All right, we're going to move on to FBS football here. We're going to move on to some news and some recruiting from some of our teams here from around the state of Michigan. First, Central Michigan. Some news from Central. First bit of information, the 2022 quarterback Max Brown, 3-star, was committed to Central Michigan, decommits, and he is now heading to Florida. So a big flip. As Brett mentioned before we started recording, he doesn't really blame him. Mount Pleasant, Michigan to Florida.
What you got, Brett?
Location aside, you're going from MAC to SEC. Like that's when was the last time someone was committed to a MAC school and committed to the SEC in a flip for scholarship? I know
nothing high profile that
Antonio Brown, but the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, you see opposite a lot where they're going down. But it's definitely interesting. He must have had a great senior year. for Florida to come in last minute. Granted, Florida has a new coach, and he's probably trying to put his first recruiting class together. No offense to Max Brown, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the transfer portal in a couple of years. It seems to be how it goes. But something that comes to mind is Dan Villari, a quarterback that came to Michigan and I believe it was the 2019 class for Jim Harbaugh. He was like an under the radar guy that out of nowhere just committed to Michigan just before signing day. He was committed to some school out east, some small school. For some reason, a school that starts with an F is ringing the bell, but I can't think of it. But nonetheless, no one really ever expected him to start at Michigan. He went, had a decent career at Michigan. He got some playing time, but ultimately he just transferred to Syracuse. So I kind of see a similar path for Max Brown, more of a last-second ad to get some guys in the quarterback room. But nonetheless, good luck to Max in his football career.
So in our notes here, I don't have anything off the top of my head on this, but Brett, if you would like to add anything, or Kory, I don't have any knowledge on it, but you had mentioned that they had added former SMU linebacker coach Tom Mason at Central Michigan. If you want to talk about this a little bit.
Tom Mason just got added, linebacker coach at Central. The other linebacker coach had recently left. He's an older guy. He's in his mid-60s. He has a great mustache. This is another guy. I encourage you to look him up on Google and just admire his mustache. I know Kory on here. He strives for his mustache to look like that.
Not this thing? You mean
I've got a nice mustache.
What about this?
Oh, Vince, I didn't even know you had a mustache. I can kind of see it now.
The crustache?
It's a sign of respect. If you can rock a mustache, it's a sign of respect. But Tom Mason has that mustache, and he deserves the respect. He's been around football with a number of coordinating opportunities at Boise State, Nevada, SMU, where he just most recently came from, Hawaii, and UTEP. So it's not a huge name, but Coach McElwain up in Mount Pleasant looks like he's bringing some maturity and some knowledge, old school knowledge to the staff, the Chippewas.
I just want to put it out there that Brett put in our notes as a bullet point, has a great mustache, and it made me laugh out loud earlier today when I read it. So I appreciate Brett putting that in our notes. All right, we're going to move on to another MAC school here, Eastern Michigan football. This is not really new news, but it's not something we had mentioned before, and we thought we would bring it up. This was kind of all over Twitter and social media a couple weeks ago. Charlie Batch offered Caleb Williams a massive NIL deal to transfer to Eastern Michigan. I mean, it was kind of laughable, but then I think people stepped back and were like, whoa, wait a minute. This could be what the NIL, what the kind of stuff that could happen in the NIL era. It was announced that he would pay him $1 million a year if he committed to the Eagles. He put this on Twitter off his own Twitter page, Charlie Batch. Any thoughts on this one, guys?
So I think what's interesting, and I don't have the facts in front of me right now, but this company that Charlie Batch works with that was like promoting this NIL deal is also the same company that's been working with some of the Michigan players to get NIL deals. And I think it's kind of like
Above Capital, I believe.
Above
Capital. Yeah,
it's the new big thing, though. These investment groups are popping up everywhere. So keep an eye out for if this might be just like a Ipsy, Ann Arbor type deal, you know what I mean, where they're trying to jump into the NIL business being like in the Detroit area. So could be something.
A couple of notes I have. It'd be interesting to understand what that company's ROI is, their return on their investment. I mean, do those guys really provide that much income to them? I mean,
that's an interesting observation.
I don't see them ever getting their money back unless there's some clause where when this guy goes to the NFL, they have some sort of 10%. Royalty. Yeah, well, it's probably more like 1% or 0.5% or something.
Do you think it's a tax? They can do it as like a tax write-off potentially?
I don't know enough about it. There has to be some sort of incentive for these companies aside from just purely off-field performance. I mean, if you're at Eastern Michigan, it's not like there's going to be a lot of people buying Caleb Williams gear and whatnot. I mean, evidently the deal wasn't that great because he's not considering Eastern Michigan. At this point, he's down to either LSU or USC to his transfer destination. But I think it's just interesting. I mean, you wonder what sort of, because this surfaced because it's a small school, you wonder what sort of deals are being put out at some of the larger schools.
It's surfaced because Charlie Batch literally tweeted at Caleb Williams and said, "I'll give you $1 million."
Literally tweeted at him. Yeah, I'll give you $1 million to come to Eastern Michigan University. Come to Ypsilanti, Michigan, bro, for $1 million.
You can get some White Castle. And we'll give you $1 million.
Oh, and by the way, our field turf is gray, so you look great. Let's look at the football on our gray turf.
Another noteworthy news topic here for Eastern Michigan University. The special teams coordinator, and actually he held several roles at Eastern Michigan University, Jay Nunez, who's an Oklahoma native, was reportedly hired by Oklahoma to be a part of their staff in an off the field position to oversee special teams, which is interesting. I would imagine being from Oklahoma originally, that really helped draw him back there, and then being a part of Oklahoma's football program is a huge draw. But I would be curious to know how much more he got paid, because at Eastern Michigan, he was promoted to their assistant head coach, coaching defensive tackles. He had quite a few, he's wearing quite a few different hats for Eastern Michigan. Thoughts on this hire for Oklahoma?
I don't blame him. I mean, I would do the same thing. He's been at Eastern for a couple of years, and none of the big fish have really bit. And I think it's time for him to go back to his roots, to Oklahoma, maybe start with the big program. Obviously, he's talented, which is why Brent Venables is bringing him to Norman to come help out with the coaching staff. I bet you his pay is fairly equivalent. But it's just funny, these two notes we have with Eastern Michigan, there's ties to Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's funny if you go
the coaching tree. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, if you look at guys' careers, that's a rabbit hole I always go down. I don't know about you guys, but you'll like some random coach to see where was their path, like what did they go down. I mean, look at Mel Tucker. That dude's been to like a dozen different places. I mean, some of these guys, they're like, you talk about journeyman quarterbacks in the NFL. I feel like you got journeyman coaches who literally go to all these different schools. So you never know where guys, their careers take them just to, build their resume up. At the end of the day, Eastern Michigan's an FBS program. You got to build your resume somehow. No, not saying anything negatively about Eastern, but let's be honest, Eastern hasn't necessarily been a storied program.
They have improved over the years, maybe because of Jay Nunez. We'll find out.
They have done better.
Down goes Eastern because of Jay Nunez.
Moving on to our last MAC football news here, is just going to mention our final team from the state of Michigan here in the conference. Western Michigan extended their head coach, Tim Lester, 2-year extension. He's been 32 and 25. He was the coach who took over PJ Fleck for 5 years now, which is crazy that PJ Fleck's been gone that long. It doesn't feel like it's been 5 years, but with COVID, it feels like 2 to 3 years has just flown by. 32 and 25 in 5 seasons at his alma mater. We've talked about Western on the podcast here. We're pretty impressed with Western's season. We think there's a lot to be said about them going into next year. With the season that they had, they pounded a Nevada team that was pretty solid out of the Mountain West to end the season in their bowl game. We like to think that Western may be a potential MAC championship game team next year.
Yeah, and they just signed this transfer QB, Stone Hollenbach, who was a walk-on at Alabama back in 2019. So it's actually pretty interesting to think about. I mean, he had a COVID. He's been at Alabama 3 seasons. So there's no way his body has not improved, and he has not improved being at the best football program in the country over those last 3 seasons. Who knows? They might have found a little diamond in the rough. 2-star guy with like no offers either, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about a little bit later here the NFL quarterbacks, how being a 5-star
it don't mean shit.
It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, and the position for quarterback is open this year with Caleb Elby declaring for the draft. It's definitely going to be interesting. I know I'm sure he's learned a lot being at Alabama behind Mac Jones, Tua, he probably caught the tail end of Tua's career, and then Bryce Young this year at Alabama. So he's been in a room with some talented
I was going to say
guys.
he knows what it takes. That's for sure.
And he's probably been the practice team quarterback, the scout team quarterback, playing against Alabama's starting defense throughout his career. So it'll be really interesting to see how his career pans out down in Kalamazoo.
I bet his IM team is really good.
He has a hell of a name, though. I mean, that name alone deserves to start.
Stone Hollenbach. What a name. Yeah, that's a great name.
Jesus.
All right, let's move on to Big Ten football news here before we kind of wrap up college and get into NFL. We're going to start with University of Michigan here. Rashawn Gary, I'm just going to talk about him really quick. A stellar playoff game, 4 tackles, 3 TFLs, 3 QB hits, 2 sacks. You guys have any thoughts on Rashawn Gary's performance? Played pretty well.
I think what they say on the streets is he's found his bag. He had it was the best season he's probably had in his entire career. So, and Brett will probably back me up. He's kind of finally found his niche. I believe he's an unrestricted free agent. So hopefully either the Packers pay him or he goes somewhere else and makes some money and his mom doesn't lynch it off of him. So.
But no, I agree, Kory. He's had kind of a bumpy career, and I don't think Michigan really utilized him the way they could. I think the way he's being utilized for the Packers is perfect for him. I think he'd really, if he was playing for Mike McDonald, not to go on too big of a tangent, but in a role like Aiden Hutchinson this year, kind of a stand-up position off the edge, gives him a little bit of coverage experience too in the flats. I think he would have been great in that system. But it's good to see a big name guy that went through the Michigan program start to make a name for himself in the NFL. And like Kory said, he earned his bag. And in a contract year, he will earn his bag. And I would love to see him come play for the Lions, but I'm sure we won't get him for a bargain.
Yeah, and I make the comment about his mom because his mom's his agent. I'm pretty sure, like toward the tail end of his career at Michigan, he like opened up his own LLC and became his own agent that was ran by his mom.
Gary.
Which freaks me out. Like if my mom ever did that, I'd be like, Mom, get the fuck away from me. So I don't
know. Another fun fact here. Not really news, but yeah, more of a fun fact. Chad Henne, I feel like, is a quarterback that the three of us remember. I mean, he played at the University of Michigan in the mid 2000s. So the three of us were in, middle school, high school when he was playing. So we all remember him. But a lot of younger football fans probably have no idea who the hell Chad Henne is. He has been in the NFL since 2008, very quietly. He's had a very quiet career, and he has currently been a backup with the Kansas City Chiefs since 2018, a very coveted position in the NFL, just making millions of dollars, backing up one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Yeah. So, I mean, it's amazing looking at his stats, his career stats. The guy has thrown for 13,000 passing yards in the NFL and 60 touchdowns. Like, he's played quite a bit, but he's just been kind of low key. I think he probably had more playing time he's only been with 3 teams. He was with the Dolphins for 4 seasons, the Jaguars for 6 seasons, and now this is his 4th or 5th season with the Chiefs. So he obviously has not played much for the Chiefs because Mahomes. So
he's got the Blue Mountain State roll down. He's the backup quarterback, baby. He's just getting bitches and making money and hanging out.
I think, not to discredit his career, but he's been used. He could be Mahomes' mentor, and you don't even know it. I mean, a lot of these guys like Chad Henne, I mean, they could pay somebody else a lot less money to be a backup quarterback than a guy like Chad Henne that's pushing 18 years in the NFL. But he's a guy that they like him. Obviously, they like him. They like the way that him and Mahomes get along. I'm sure he's mentored Mahomes before Mahomes became the quarterback that he is. But he's also, he steps up when he needs the Chiefs to the playoff win last year against the Browns when Mahomes didn't play due to concussion protocol. And for those of you that don't remember, there was a key 4th down play in the game where Henne, who is probably even slower than Vince, ended up running Ended up running for a
Yo,
first.
I got my 40 down to a 4.88 at my peak
Ooh.
athletic condition, bruh.
And I ran a 4.9. So
Was that-
there's that.
No, you did not.
Vince, was that in 8th grade?
That was my 3rd year of college when I was 220 pounds.
But no, he's definitely talented, and it is interesting to see a guy like that stick around for so long. He's a high-profile recruit coming to Michigan. He was 5-star recruit, ranked higher than JJ McCarthy was. To give you some perspective on the profile of recruit he was. But it's also interesting when he was at Michigan. Mike Hart was a running back, and Mike Hart is now the running backs coach at Michigan. So they came in the same class in both 2004.
Yeah, but when you're a backup, I mean, he's had some seasons where he's played significantly, but when you're a backup for this long, I mean, he's 36 years old. I think he turns 37 this year. I just saw. I mean, he could probably play for another. If he continues to be a backup, yeah, he could keep playing. I mean, you're not getting hurt. You're not getting hit. I mean,
it's just nuts to think that Michigan has obviously Tom Brady and Chad Henne, two of the top 60 quarterbacks in the entire United States. And those guys haven't played at Michigan in 15, 16, 17 years. It's funny to think about. But I'm interested to see how much longer he plays. Well, backs up, I should say. He doesn't really play.
He's in a perfect spot, dude. Didn't he win? Because he won a Super Bowl. I mean, now it's just like backing shit up.
Can he make the Hall of Fame as a backup quarterback?
Greatest back. That's Ryan Fitzpatrick, the greatest back of all time.
Yeah.
Greatest journeyman quarterback of all time. All right, let's wrap this up here with our last Michigan news in air quotes. Harbaugh went semi-viral on Twitter, probably more in the state of Michigan than nationally. He was down in Florida recruiting some kids in Florida and at a Jesuit school because the weight room that he's in has a stained glass window and he is squatting what appears to be at least 135 pounds.
It's 135.
At least 135. It's hard to tell if there's more plates on because the bars of the rack are in the way. But he's recruiting some players and squatting for a picture. Good depth. Got to give it to Harbaugh. Good depth.
Getting
all the way down, getting down to parallel. In nice slacks and a dress shirt. I was concerned about the back of that dress shirt getting some rust on it because it's a light colored dress shirt. Might have ruined it. May have to take that to the dry cleaners later. Harbaugh continues his eccentric and eclectic streak, being one of the weirdest coaches in college football. But the dude finds success. So I mean, can you really question his methods?
Rumor on the street is that Ryan Day, the Ohio State coach, was down there previously and had a similar situation where he was squatting. And apparently Harbaugh knew that. And before he went to go squat, he asked him how many reps Ryan Day did, and they said 15. So he went ahead and did 20. I love it.
That man is a goofball who lives off Diet Coke and Red Man Chew, which I absolutely love. That's my coach.
Oh, man. All right. To kind of wrap up our Big Ten news here, the last little tidbit here is just some Michigan State news. The O-line coach for Michigan State, Chris Kapilovich, was given an extension and a raise. So their O-line was ranked number 71 out of the almost 130 FBS teams. So pretty middle ground in the 2021 season. This is according to PFF. So interesting to see him get a raise. But to my knowledge, he is a fairly new hire, right? I believe he was brought in with Mel.
I think so, yeah.
Stanton, right, was the previous O-line coach at Michigan State. So, you know, with any time you get new coaches on the staff and a new head coach, you got to give him some time. So he didn't have a bad season, you know, the offensive line. They had an interesting method. If you watch Michigan State football this year, they had like a hockey kind of, method to their offensive line where they actually rotated through 3 different offensive lines.
Dude, it's so hard to do. We tried to do it once, and it was like the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. In college, we tried.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with doing that. I'm not going to speculate on their coaching methods and tactics. MSU won 11 games this year, went 11-2.
Sure.
But you could also argue I'm a huge Michigan State fan. I watched every game pretty closely. I don't think their offensive line did that well. I think Kenneth Walker kind of picked up the slack a lot for them.
Yep.
So, I don't know. You guys have any thoughts on this? I don't really have a lot of thoughts on it. He's a new coach. He's getting an extension. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, he's only been there 2 years, so the extension's weird to me. And they haven't done anything marvelous with their offensive line. It's not like he came in and rejuvenated or anything crazy. So I think it's a little premature, but if they got extra money to toss around because donors are giving them money, then they got extra money, and kudos to Michigan State.
I do want to point out too, their offensive line was fairly young this year. So maybe they like the progress that they made throughout the season, and they're trying to give them some money before a potential big year that they have upcoming. But it just seems like a lot of money to give to a guy that hasn't been as high profile success as you would think for somebody getting paid $1 million a year.
Well, with that, we're going to move on here to our final college topic in our notes, and just some players that have gone to the transfer portal, some high profile players. You got a defensive back, Michael Dowell, who found a home at Miami of Ohio, previously committed to Pittsburgh. Offensive lineman Jacob Isaiah Redshirt Jr., who is a graduate student. Where was this guy? We don't have this in our notes at the moment. Where is this guy transferring?
He doesn't know yet. He just announced this week that he's in the portal. His dad played at Michigan State. He's a legacy guy. He stuck out his career here at Michigan State, but it looks like he's going to go elsewhere and trying to get some playing time for his final year of college.
And then we got a linebacker, 2021 class, highest ranked recruit.
Pronounce it, Vince.
Oh, man, you guys are going to make me do it. Ma Gauteote.
Ooh.
How was that?
Can you talk like that? Oh, I like it.
Ma Gauteote.
I think
I'm trying to do it. Being a Spanish teacher, I was trying to do it with a Spanish accent. But pair of recent Michigan State linebacker transfers. Commits are pushing him away. Linebackers are kind of seem to be a hot commodity at MSU. Linebackers, pretty good linebackers for MSU this last year between Crouch and Halliday. So for them to keep kind of bringing in linebackers. So has he announced where he's going?
Michigan State's going through linebackers like guys go through girls at Sticky Ricky's on a Friday night, in and out, and just pulling them from wherever they can get them. So.
Has he announced where he's going or no?
No, he hasn't announced yet. He was a USC commit before flipping to Michigan State late last year in their recruiting class. But he hasn't announced where he's headed. I'd assume it's probably in the Pac-12 somewhere. He's a talented kid. He just clearly with the recent signings of Jacoby Wyndham and Aaron Brule from UNLV and Mississippi State, respectively, I don't know if he got a little bit intimidated.
Plus, there are 2 other starters that are coming back. Crouch is coming back, and
this brings up a conversation we had with Ryan Anderson on our podcast not that long ago. I understand that kids with this new rule got to do what they think is best for them, but why not ride it out? In the age of college football, did he lose his red shirt this year? I didn't really follow that closely to see if he
played in 9 games, so he lost his red shirt.
I didn't think about it. Think about it this way: they had Crouch, who's coming back. They had who's the number 27,
Halliday. Crouch.
Halliday's coming back, and then they bring in 2 transfers who have significant Division I starting. When's he going to play? He's not. He's 4th on the depth chart by rule. He could technically probably be 3rd on the depth chart.
This still gets into that conversation that we had with Ryan, where it's like, at what point does it stop? Are you going to become a carousel, right? Where you're just transferring and transferring and transferring and transferring. Like, at what point do you stop and just hit the grindstone and try to power through and earn a starting spot? I mean, he hasn't even given himself a chance. I mean, one season, right? He's a true freshman. He still played in 9 games. But as a true freshman, you know, I get you got transfers coming in, and Halliday and Crouch are good competition, but you never even know in college football. Sometimes they move guys to different positions. He could get moved to something else. And if that's something he doesn't like, you know, I get that. That's totally understandable. But I don't know. My attitude as a former college football player, and, you know, I didn't play major Division I, so I don't know that perspective, but I feel like, you know, you got to give it a couple years and really fight. I mean, with the new transfer rule, I mean, you could really give it 2 years and work your ass off, and, you know, then you still got 2 more years of eligibility. If you really feel like after 2 years you haven't, you know, you're seeing that there's not something there, I guess. But I don't know. Personally, for me,
the guy.
What's that?
Guy.
Yeah,
he wants to be the guy.
I get that. You know, and that was never me. I wasn't going to be the guy at some major FBS school, so it's hard for me to truly, you know, understand that. But
I mean, you look at a couple of these guys that have transferred. You have Jacob Isaiah. He was on Michigan State's team for 4 years. Didn't play, grad transferring to play. You know, he's a 2 or 3 star recruit coming out of Nevada. He actually went to the same school, high school, Bishop Gorman, as Maya Gaotiote. But then you have Maya, or Mayo, I don't know how to say his name. He's the highest ranked recruit in Michigan State's class. So he's coming in thinking like, I'm going to be the dude.
I'm playing.
I'm going to play. I mean, it's just a different mindset. And I'm sure Mel Tucker didn't flip him from USC to say, hey, you're going to play in 9 games this year and have 7 tackles. Like, I'm sure that was not the recruiting pitch. Ultimately, I mean, there's some situations where a guy will transfer to another school and just blow up. You know, Jamison Williams comes to mind. He wasn't going to play at Ohio State this year. Goes to Bama, top wide receiver in the nation. There are some instances, but there's more instances where the guy just flat out isn't very good. And I know Bishop Gorman seems to me, and there's definitely some different situations, but to me, it seems like they always have these guys that just come out of high school and they don't pan out. The one that really comes to mind is Tate Martell, former 5-star recruit going to Ohio State. Yeah, just retired from football. He went from Ohio. He went to Ohio State, didn't play. Transferred to Miami, didn't play. Then transferred back to Nevada and played for UNLV. Played for a year. Well, participated for a year and just decided he was going to quit. I mean, that was a former 5-star recruit. I just think that when you go to a school like Bishop Gorman that never loses and you're a high-profile recruit, it damages your self-demeanor, like your self-drive. You think you just got it and you don't want to work for it. And I think that's the struggle, and we're going to continue to see this carousel. I don't see it coming to an end. I don't.
It starts to make you question the whole concept around ranking high school football players. Like, none of us were quote unquote star ranked athletes, so we don't really know, but I can't even imagine what that would do to my ego. You know, I didn't have to experience that, but I'm just trying to like think back, like in high school, if I was that good and I got like even a 3-star, like what would that have done to my ego? Man, I'm a 3-star recruit. You know, like I don't know what that would have done to my ego. How would I have thought of myself? I mean, in the days of social media and internet and rampant narcissism, I just wonder how much of a detriment that is to kids and their outlook on potential playing time going to major universities. If I'm a 5-star recruit, I should be playing, you know, not earn it. When it's like, what does that 5-star even mean? Who gave that to you? Some random news outlet online?
I mean, I think
the coaches, at the end of the day, the college coaches have to evaluate you and decide where you go and where you play. Those online systems don't mean shit. So
I mean, no, they literally do not mean anything from like a hoop starts and whatnot. I mean, the star system, I would say, is fairly accurate with like the ability you're coming out of high school with, but that doesn't mean shit. I mean, like we'll talk about later.
Regionally though. Because those kids aren't playing kids from across the nation most of the times, unless they're playing at some high profile school that's like doing ESPN games.
Bishop Gorman.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's that?
Bishop Corman.
Yeah, that's one example. But I'm saying like some of these 5-star recruits, aren't going around playing against kids from all around the country like they would in college football.
Well, no, but the thing is too, when you're that high profile, you probably have, I don't know, at least 15 FBS schools that have given you offers. And at the end of your recruitment, you probably have 5 big time programs fighting over you. And you're not going to go to a school that's going to say, oh, you're probably not going to play right away. You're probably going to go to a school where you have a chance to start, and you go there and you're not starting, and you just get pissed and you get in a rabbit hole and you can't get out of it. So you just decide to leave.
Yep.
It's going to continue. It is. But it's okay. It's just how the game is today. And it's, in a way, it's what makes it so interesting. You can't predict the ceiling of some of these players. And seeing a picture of him coming out of high school, I mean, this guy looks like physically, he looked like he was ready to go in the NFL just from like reading a book by or judging a book by its cover. But there's a lot more that goes into football than how fast you are and how many times you can bench press 225 pounds.
So Vince, to keep this moving, as a Michigan State fan, I'm gonna introduce this topic. Does this worry you? Does having transfers leave and bringing transfers in worry the recruiting within your program, Michigan State?
Yeah, because Michigan State's had 5 out of their 18 transfers since the start of 21 season be true freshmen.
Honestly, yeah, it is kind of concerning as a fan, especially as someone who is, a huge fan of D'Antonio, and I loved hanging my hat on D'Antonio, kind of having a similar reputation to Izzo, where, bringing in overlooked guys and developing them, guys who were not 4 or 5-star recruits, guys who are not high profile guys, guys who would stay for 4 or 5 years and develop. I liked that. I liked that attitude. And not to say I don't like Mel. I do like Mel. I like a lot of, what he brings to the program. Obviously, I'm not, going to sneer at an 11-2 season. We had a heck of a season this year and no one was expecting it. But in terms of the future, it's going to be very interesting to see where it goes. And I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. And personally, from a, I don't know if I use the word virtue, but like, I guess philosophy standpoint, especially as a high school coach, if I was a college coach, philosophically, I don't really like it.
I just keep going back to, if I was a high school kid and I got recruited to a major Division I school, like, for example, if I was a linebacker recruit for Michigan State, I would be sick to my stomach knowing I got 2 guys coming in with 2 extra years of eligibility who were very good at the Division I level. Like, I would be sick because you're not going to play.
The only thing I would add is it creates a hell of a atmosphere for competition.
I mean, yeah, iron sharpens iron, no doubt. Yeah. But the thing is, what's next year? They're going to bring in 2 other linebacker transfers. Mm-hmm. I mean, Mel historically in his 2 years at Michigan State hits the portal hard. Like, he tries to bring in 15 plus transfers every single year. It's pretty much kind of a slap in the face to a freshman in a way. It's like, oh, you're not good enough, I'll just bring somebody else in. But that's the culture he's establishing. And so far it's seemed to work for him. He's hit on some of these guys he's brought in. So it'll be interesting over the next couple of years to see if he can keep that, if that style is sustainable by any means.
He's definitely doing what Saban was warning people about, manipulating the new rules, and, credit to him. He's taking new rules and what you're allowed to do and running with it. But yeah, sustainability, we'll see. I don't know.
One thing one thing about Nick Saban briefly, like, who the heck is he to say anything? This guy gets anybody he wants. He's not in the shoes of these other guys. And if he was, he'd be doing the exact same thing. So I don't care to hear any of his opinions on any topic like this.
I do know, as somebody who played college football, even when I was like later in my career, sophomore, junior, senior year, when we'd bring in transfers, I don't know if you guys brought in any transfers at Hillsdale, Vince, but
Grand Valley does.
And Northwood,
we didn't bring in a lot, but we brought in a few.
Yeah, it wasn't. They ended up being like, it was probably 50-50. Some of them panned out, some of them didn't. Whatever. But it brings like an it's an uneasy feeling because it's somebody new that you don't know who.
Our guest last week, Chance Stewart, transfer from Western Michigan to Hillsdale College.
Very true. Very true. Which
And
was
he started.
like, I was going to say that was like a godsend though. Just, oh!
We got a 4-star recruit. Chance, if you're listening, we love you, man. You brought us a conference championship and playoff win. So,
and literally carried it on your back. But no, it was just like an uneasiness from like like who is this person? Are they going to buy in to the goals of the program? Are they going to take my spot? Are they going to be good? Are they going to have a good head on their shoulders? Like just shit like that. I mean, I don't know. I noticed that at Northwood because we would bring in a handful of JUCO transfers every year, probably 4 to 6 of them. And you'd bring in maybe 1 or 2 just other transfers. So just depends.
be interesting to see where this goes in the future. Definitely a lot of new rules in college football. In addition to the transfer portal, NIL, be interesting to see where it goes.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. All right, let's move on to our final topic here, and that's NFL. We're going to get into several different things with the NFL. First, just really quick, want to mention the playoff games. I mean, obviously the Detroit Lions were not playing, but what a weekend. I watched all 4 games from start to finish. A lot of people online and, on air and pundits and everywhere are calling this probably one of the greatest weekends in NFL playoff history. All 4 games were decided on the final play of the game, coming down to, a touchdown or less, field goals in most situations. Both number 1 seeds lost at home. 3 road teams won their games. Crazy weekend. Just kind of recap it before we talk about it. San Francisco won at Green Bay 13-10, had a blocked punt for a touchdown. Cincinnati won at Tennessee 19-16. So those are the 2 1 seeds going down. The Rams won at Tampa Bay 30-27. Game-winning drive for Matt Stafford with a last-second field goal. And then Kansas City ended the weekend being Buffalo in overtime in one of the craziest games in recent memory in the playoffs in NFL, 42-36. Obviously, we're going to get into a few details here, especially with the LA, Tampa Bay, Kansas City, Buffalo game. But overall thoughts, guys?
Best weekend of NFL football probably ever, regardless of the playoffs or anything. Pretty freaking amazing.
Never seen anything.
Just like blows my mind. First off, you get to see Green Bay lose, which is always great because Aaron Rodgers' stupid ass face was just shell shocked. That fucking meme was just shell shocked that Jimmy Garoppolo, who I'm pretty sure was like 8 of 30 in that game passing, somehow San Francisco beats them. They blocked that punt, and then
blocked punt, man. Special teams.
How many times have we seen it? Matt Stafford, when he got the ball with like 40 seconds left, I go, they're going to win. Like you just knew it.
You can go back to my Twitter. Go back to my Twitter feed. I was tweeting with one of my former students and former high school basketball players at Grand Ledge here, Devin Wilson. Devin was tweeting at me, and I go, dude, they left Stafford too much time. I go, this is what he was known for in Detroit. I didn't say that verbatim, but he tweeted back at me afterwards. He goes, dude, you were right. You called it. I'm like, I think we all 3 of us.
If you've watched Lions football, you know it's going to happen.
Yeah. How many? I mean, I don't know the exact number, but I mean, I remember that was always a stat on the screen when Stafford played and at end of games. How many game-winning touchdown drives?
43. He has the most ever. It's 43.
It's insane. 42 seconds and a timeout. Too much time for Stafford. He basically had 2 big throws. It was like 2 big throws.
Yeah.
And how many? I can't think of another time when Green Bay loses at home in the playoffs when it's 0-degree wind chill and snowing. Like that never happens.
Did you see the stat they had on the screen before the game? That they said it was a very obscure stat, but relevant to what you're talking about. They said all time California teams, all time it was like at Green Bay or in the Midwest. It was like cold. It was It was January and December playoff games or regular season and postseason NFL games. California teams on the road, like in the Midwest. Maybe it was in Green Bay. We're 2-11 all time. I think it was at Green Bay.
It's freezing.
Yeah. So they were like saying that they basically California teams never win in Green Bay. So like just the point you're saying there, like, yeah, it's crazy.
And it's really, this is another reason why the NFL is the most widely watched or pro sport, because there's just so much change year to year in teams. And basketball, you'll have the Golden State Warriors, the Lakers, or the Celtics, or the Heat. All these teams win. They're in the championship like 5-6 years in a row. Either they win or they lose. In the NFL, it's so dynamic with which teams are going to make it. It's what makes it interesting.
Unless you're Tom Brady.
Well, I did read that this is the first year in 12 years that the AFC and NFC championship game will not have either Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady playing in either one of those conference championships.
Yep.
And the Buffalo Bills game was the Kansas City Bills, probably the best football game I've ever seen, just from the standpoint of the minute you thought it was over, you're like, holy shit, they left too much time.
And then again, too much time. Oh, then again, too much time. Then again, too much time.
Just think about this, though. Patrick Mahomes did in 14 seconds what Dak Prescott couldn't do in 14 seconds.
13 seconds. He did it in 13 seconds.
Yeah. Crazy. It was unbelievable. My wife was freaking out.
So that gets us into, then I guess while you're talking about this game, we should talk about it. Actually, no, because that might go on for a little bit. One more thing I just want to mention before we talk about the NFL overtime. Just want to mention Stafford. I don't know about you guys. We're a Michigan football podcast here. We love Detroit Lions. You know, they suck, but we love them. I'm a huge Stafford fan. I'm pretty sure Kory and Brett are big Stafford fans. I was watching that game start to finish, like rooting for Stafford, the LA Rams. Like, I don't give a shit about the LA Rams. I just want Stafford to win. I want to see that guy do well. I'm always going to wish for the best. LA did everything to lose that game. 4 fumbles. One of them was on the 1-yard line before halftime. Missed field goal. 47-yarder. He left it short. Matt Gay, who's like a really good field goal kicker, left it short. Yeah. Stafford still finds a way. After they're up 27-3, it gets tied 27-27, 24 unanswered points. And Stafford leads a game-winning field goal to end the game. Stafford now has more playoff wins than Detroit's franchise in the Super Bowl era. Gotta throw that out there.
So you're
With
saying
2
Detroit's
versus
the
1.
problem.
Detroit is the problem.
I said I didn't want to talk about that this week.
I mean,
It's
it's
painful,
not
but
just
it's true.
Detroit. I think the Lions should just hire Sean McVay. He could win with Goff and he could win with Stafford. Just bring Sean McVay to Detroit.
I think the
I love
kneecap
Dan
biter.
Campbell. I love
Yeah.
Dan Campbell. I love Dan
I'm bought
Campbell.
in.
I'm bought into Dan Campbell.
I
see
like
what
Dan
happens.
too.
I like him.
Hey, the rumor on the street
I'm not
is
saying
that
he's going to
Sean
win a
Payton,
Super Bowl, but I like him.
the rumor on the streets that Sean Payton stepped down as head coach so he can come be the OC at the Detroit Lions. Heard it here first.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Last thing I think we should talk about before we move on, though, is we got to talk about the NFL overtime. This is something that's been trending on Twitter. People, I don't know if they were as tuned into it previously. Obviously, there was some controversy a few years ago. Kansas City was on the other end of this a couple years ago, but essentially the NFL overtime rule in the regular season, they can play to a tie. In the playoffs, you can decide a team winning on a coin flip because both teams don't get a chance. It's the only level of any sport that I can think of where in overtime or, post regulation, extra minutes in soccer, whatever you want to call it, that both teams don't have opportunities to win the game. I can't think of any other sport or any other level where it exists.
I can't, but I do have a stat for you that will make you think about this. Are you ready? This is from Louis Riddick on ESPN. Of the 163 overtime games, regular season and playoffs, under the current overtime rules, only 35 of the 163 were decided by a touchdown on the first possession of overtime, 21.5%. Don't tell me coin flips are deciding games in OT. Strategy and execution does. From Louis Riddick.
I mean, that stat is definitely interesting, but it's still bullshit that one team doesn't even have the opportunity to get the ball in their hands. I mean, that's
Stop
like
'em.
saying that's like, okay, well, it's easier said than done. If you watch the fourth quarter of that football game, they couldn't stop a nosebleed.
Neither defense could
Neither
stop the
defense.
opponent offense. So
I mean, I don't even know. That's like in baseball. You go into extra innings and it's the first team to score. Okay, well, the team that's batting in the top of the inning definitely has an advantage. It's no different than what they're doing in football.
Yes, it is. It's only a 20% chance to score based on the stats since all the overtime games.
That's a pretty high percentage in my opinion.
Of the time, 1/5 of the time, a fifth of the time, the team who gets the ball first is winning the game.
I mean, if somebody tells me, hey, if you bet $1,000 to win $1 million and you have a 20% chance, yeah, I'm putting my money all in.
Okay, it's much different than that because that's all luck. That's like probability, not actually strategy.
The way that you preface that stat is there's a 20% chance. So so you're saying you like the overtime the way it is?
No, here's my take on overtime. It should be 8 minutes. It's just an 8-minute quarter. Whoever's winning at the end of the 8 minutes wins the game.
It'd be great. I
don't know. I like high school and college, although college kind of screwed things up this year with their third overtime rule. I like high school and college where each team gets the ball at an end zone and starts at a certain yard line, and you get in or you don't. And then the other team gets a shot. You get in or you don't. You continue until one team wins. For me as a fan, it's fun. And then I also think in terms of traditional football, I think it makes sense. And just sports in general, I think it just makes sense. I don't understand why the NFL digs their heels. And this is like last week we talked about the rule with the fucking clock not stopping on first downs, on the first down marker in NFL. Why do they insist on having these rules that are so arbitrary but end up being very significant to be so much different than other levels of the sport? I don't. It like, are they just trying to be different?
Why is Division
because they're the NFL
football difference?
Huh?
Why is Division I football playoff different? Because they can be. I mean, they don't have to answer.
But the rules of the game are different than the postseason. I'm talking about the rules of the game that apply no matter what game is being played, regular season or postseason.
I don't care.
Why do they got to change the rules like that?
I don't care what overtime format they come up with, but both teams should have an opportunity to have the ball.
Agreed.
I just said I wanted that 8 minutes though, like an 8 minute quarter.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot.
So you're saying I don't think the time matters. I think the thing that's significant is that if you get the ball first, you score a touchdown, you win. That to me is what's significant.
Yeah. No, I'm saying I'm looking at the playoff from like a strat. When I said the 8 minutes, it's like a strategy thing because I was thinking about it. I was like, well, you could do 4 minutes, but you can hold the ball for 4 minutes. You could do 6 minutes, but every team's got a 6 minute drill, so you'd hold the ball for 6 minutes. I think 8 minutes is an adequate amount of time that, like, if one team held the ball for 5 minutes and went down and scored, it gives the other team a chance to score with about 3 minutes left. So.
If you really want to test the football team, you just play it normal. And the way you call a game from your own 25-yard line is a lot different than the way you call your game from your opponent's 25-yard line. And if you want to keep, like Kory said, 8 minutes, I don't care. You just got to play normal football for an extended period of time. And especially the way that Bills Chiefs game was going, if you played another 8 minutes, chances are there'd probably be at least 21, 28 points scored in that time, which would be so fun to watch. But I mean, we're all going to tune into the games this weekend, so the NFL doesn't care what we think because the game's going to move on. But I think if the Chiefs would have lost and the Bills would have won, people would probably be saying a little bit less about the way that the overtime structures. It's just the fact that the favorite team, the team that's been on fire the last 3 years, the fact that they won is the reason why people have an issue.
Did you guys see the videos that surfaced of Mahomes' wife and his brother spraying champagne all over the crowd?
Oh my God, I hate them so much. Yeah, I saw that.
I really wish
bags.
I would have been. I tweeted.
Could you imagine being the person getting covered in champagne? You've been sitting out in freezing cold weather, just getting covered in champagne by some.
That's what I said. Yeah. Thanks from your heated box seat spraying me with fucking sugar drink.
Sticky champagne. Like,
I don't know. If I was a Lions fan and the Lions just won a game to go to the NFC Championship, you can dump whatever you want on top of my head. I don't care.
That is a broad statement, Brett. You better be careful about what
does anybody know any horses?
Yeah, Vince has been catching up on his Jackass movies. Sent me a Snapchat of the horse scene.
We'll let you figure that one out if you've ever seen Jackass 2. All right. Do you guys have anything else you want to add on the playoffs? Otherwise, we're going to kind of wrap this thing up here. A couple topics left.
Nope.
One last kind of topic here with the NFL before we kind of wrap things up. Players from the state of Michigan that are still in the NFL playoffs. These are guys, we put a picture out on Twitter. These are guys that have been born in the state of Michigan or they played at a college in the state of Michigan. There are 3 players for the Rams: Brian Allen from Michigan State, David Long from Michigan, Grant Haley, who played at Penn State, but he's from Southfield, Michigan. The 49ers has 7 players: Maurice Hurst, University of Michigan; Jalen Moore, Western Michigan; Tabor Pepper from Michigan State; Ambry Thomas from Michigan; Jared Wilson from Michigan; Darquez for Denard from Michigan State, who's on the practice squad for the 49ers; and then Lavert Hill from Michigan, who's also on the practice squad. Bengals have 4: Chris Evans from Michigan, Trey Waynes from MSU, Joe Bacci, who is from Michigan State, COVID injured reserve currently, and then Darius Phillips from Western Michigan, also injured reserve. And then the Chiefs have 6: Frank Clark from Michigan, Mike Dan, who played at Michigan and at Central Michigan, Chad Henne from Michigan, Andrew Wiley from Eastern Michigan, Austin Edwards from Ferris State, practice squad currently, and then Matthew Sexton, Eastern Michigan, who is reserve and the futures list. Quite an extensive list, 20 total guys between the 4 teams, with the most being the 49ers have 7 players. Thoughts on this list here?
So real quick before we go into the list, I didn't know, so I looked it up today. I'm assuming the average Joe doesn't know either, but for Matthew Sexton, wide receiver, punt returner from Eastern Michigan, he's on the reserve futures deal list. What that is they allow teams to sign players for next season before the end of this current league year. This signing won't count towards their roster count until the next year begins and the 90-man offseason roster is opened up for Kansas City. So essentially, Matt Sexton was signed by the Chiefs this year before the season was ending, and he will have the opportunity. They kind of get dibs on him to go into next year's mini camp squad. So that's what that futures list is, which I thought was interesting. I didn't realize that existed. It's basically calling dibs on this guy to be on your practice squad for next year, which is kind of cool. I didn't know that.
That's new.
Yeah, no, a lot of great names on this list. The one that sticks out to me, and if you guys don't know his story, Chris Evans for the Bengals, playing a pretty big role for the Bengals, third down back. His story is crazy because he didn't even play at Michigan his last year, really. I mean, he had gotten into some issues. I don't know if it was all, what was it, Brett, grades mostly, but then
he cheated on a test.
Yeah, some off-field issues too. And then he came back his last year and played sparingly, like very, very sparingly. But now he's on an NFL roster, which is kind of nuts. So,
playing in an AFC championship.
Yep.
Well, all right. Any final thoughts here? Otherwise, we could probably wrap this up. We've been going for quite a while, especially with no guest.
Give it to us, Brett. What's your
that takes us to our recommendation. Brett started us off a few weeks ago. We've made it through the rounds. Brett is back to give us a recommendation. He's the first one of us to get through 2. What do you got? What's your recommendation of the week?
So I was having a really hard time thinking of a recommendation this week. I was wondering if I should do a restaurant / brewery. Should I do some sort of entertainment, whether it be music or a movie or TV series? And ultimately, I'm going to come back to what I started with, and I'm going to suggest a brewery. just because I love craft beer and I just enjoy the atmosphere of going
How
to a
many craft
brewery.
beer glasses do you own?
I have 43 glasses behind me. So I started, not to get on too big of a tangent, I started collecting glasses at Hillsdale. I went down to watch my brother play at Hillsdale in fall of 2018.
And who were you with?
They played Lake Erie at Muddy Waters Stadium. And after the game, I went out to eat with my folks and my brother, and then I was with Vince and his dad, Steve, and they invited me over to Hillsdale Brewing. And so in the time between when the game had ended and I went out to eat with my parents, went back to my brother's place, about a 3-hour span, Vince and his dad were still at Hillsdale Brewing. So I went over there and I joined up with them. They were both about 3 or 4 craft beers deep, and I hopped on the bandwagon with them. And long story short, we closed the place down. But before we did, Vince bought pint glasses from Hillsdale Brewing, and they were telling me that they collect pint glasses. So I started in 2018, and I'm now up to 43 pint glasses from around Michigan and the Midwest. I try to buy one at every new brewery I go to. Some places, either the glass is too expensive, I won't buy it if it's over $6, or it doesn't.
That's
really
your cutoff,
me.
$6, really?
Yeah, it doesn't really interest me from a logo standpoint. But I'm up to 43 of them now. I have a number of them, so I have a number of recommendations on here. But the one that I'm going to mention this week is Thornapple Brewing.
Oh, I went there with you and Olivia.
Yeah, I took Vince and his wife there one time when they came in town to visit. His wife is pregnant, so she wasn't able to drink. But it's a really interesting brewing. They've expanded their footprint. They're located in Cascade, Michigan, right off 28th Street. They have some shanties outside that you can sit and they're heated and enjoy a nice craft beer. They also have some fine spirits that they offer. But they have a number of different types of craft beer. They have a wider variety than a lot of the other craft breweries, from lagers to IPAs, double IPAs, stouts, you name it. They have a wide variety, but I would definitely recommend Thornapple Brewing, and they have a hell of a food menu too. And they have TVs. That's one thing that a lot of breweries don't have, is TVs. And if there's a big sporting event going on, it's going to be on their TVs. And that's one thing that sometimes you struggle to find, which I can appreciate. Craft breweries want a smaller and more intimate atmosphere where you can sit and really enjoy the beer and the fellowship with your fellow beer mates. But sometimes you want to be able to go and have a fresh craft beer right off the tap and watch some football or basketball on TV too. So Thornapple Brewing on 28th Street, highly recommend. So if you get a chance and you're in the area, definitely stop by.
Well, all right. And with that, we are going to wrap things up here. Thank you for listening. We appreciate everyone who has shown us support. And then another shout out to Aaron Gleb again for our new branding, our logos, which will be out on all of our social media, podcast stores, YouTube, etc. So you'll see that going forward. So we appreciate him. Once you're done listening to this episode, make sure you head over to Twitter. GLSF Ball, BALL is our Twitter handle. Head over to Instagram, Great Lakes State Football. You can find us at those two places on social media. If you were listening on a podcast store, don't forget to check out our video versions on YouTube, Great Lakes State Football. Subscribe, hit a like, leave a comment, share those videos. Appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, we also have your episodes available on all your favorite podcast stores, including Apple and Spotify. Also, Great Lakes State Football. Leave us a 5-star review, comment. Appreciate it. All the support is greatly appreciated. This was episode 10. So we've hit 10 episodes. And in 2 months here, appreciate anyone who's shown us some love. We'll be back next week to talk about everything Great Lakes State, all football in this beautiful state of Michigan. And with that, I'm Vince. We got Kory and Brett. Great Lakes State Football, episode 10. See you next week. Go green.
We love you, Michigan. Thank you. Yeah.
Go Chargers.